there, folks, and welcome into today's video. Hope you guys are doing great as always out there. So today in this video, I want to talk about my views of the crypto market and crypto in general. I don't think I've ever actually, in the history of my YouTube channel, really recorded a video where I just gave my full views on the crypto market here toward the end here of 2021. And I want to just share some opinions on crypto in general and kind of how I think about the market and whatnot. So I hope you guys enjoy this video as always. I'll ask in return that you smash that like button. That's it, guys. I appreciate you being here as always. So in regards to the crypto market, I have some strong beliefs in a few areas, right? So first off, I think crypto is not going away. I think crypto is here to stay. This is why on the Hungry Bull app, right, an app that I'm funneling a ton of money into and trying to create into a big thing over the coming years, right? I have a specific area where you can track cryptos. We cover crypto stories in there, as well as we're going to be adding crypto news. So clearly, I personally, I'm not going to add a bunch of crypto related things to my app unless I believe there's going to be a large market there over time, right? And have other plans for crypto related things down the road with that app. So my belief is that the crypto community, the crypto market is going to grow over time and will be here to stay. I don't think this is just a one and done thing. This is a market that has grown exponentially over the past decade. And there will likely be real world utility for a lot of cryptos out there. And it will be likely a market that continues to expand and continue to grow over time. So now with that being said, where we kind of go sideways here is really around valuations of particular cryptos. And this is where things start to get interesting, right? Because there's a lot of things that are valuable in this world and that we assign value to. It doesn't always mean it is the correct value. For instance, I got a book here, one of my favorite books ever, called The Intelligent Investor by Ben Graham. This book, I don't know, it should be worth $10, $20. You know, maybe that book could sell for $10,000. Maybe that book could sell for 1 penny. 1 penny would be far too cheap, right? $10,000 would be far too much. $10, $20 is about right for that book, The Intelligent Investor. And so needless to say, everything in this world has a particular value. That Model S, I just got it yesterday, the Model S Plaid back there, right? The value of that might be, I don't know, $150,000 or whatever. And I could try to sell it for $2 million. It might be way overvalued, right? And if you got it for $10, it might be the greatest deal ever. Everything in this world has a correct value. Now, what the market can be trading at in the short term does not mean that is the correct value. That's just how that particular thing is valued there in the short term. And we've seen even with very, very serious asset classes, we've seen them get mispriced over time. You think about the housing bubble. Think about what happened in that whole scenario, right? Where in my city I live in nowadays, Las Vegas, I wasn't living here during the housing bubble, but I live here nowadays. I mean, there was houses going for $400,000+ that a year, 2 years later were going for $160,000, right? Over a 50% decrease. And something that you would think is impossible to see that sort of decrease, right? Housing? Like houses? Are you kidding me? Like they fell over 50%? That's wild to think about. And a lot of those real estate prices out here in Las Vegas have just recovered back to those sorts of levels over the past few years. Think about that. All this time later, it took that long for a lot of those prices to recover. Isn't that incredible? And so you can go through time periods where things get extremely mispriced. And if folks don't really know how to value something on a high level because it hasn't been around for a while, it gets even harder to value it. And so this is where we get into discussions on, let's break it down in a very, very simple case. Let's break it down to Bitcoin. Let's talk about the big dog of crypto. Before you get to all the altcoins and the smaller coins and all stuff like that. So you got to start at the top, which is Bitcoin, the most famous cryptocurrency by far. So Bitcoin, as of recording this today, has over $1 trillion market cap. Now, some folks feel like that is significantly undervalued. They feel like this should be valued at least as much as gold, which gold is somewhere around 10 trillion. So if Bitcoin's a little over 1 trillion, gold's at 10 trillion, people say this needs to at least 10x just to get up to gold's level. Meanwhile, on the other side, you got to say, well, why should Why should Bitcoin be valued at $1 trillion? Why does it deserve to be valued at $10 trillion? Now, some folks will say, well, it's what the market dictates. The market should decide what that is, and the market is always right. And I will say the market is not always right. Coming from somebody that's a stock picker and an investor of companies, the market is not always right. The market can do whatever it wants in the short term. It can extremely underprice assets. It can extremely overprice assets. And sometimes when it's a harder thing to value because you don't have that sort of time to value something, that's where it can get more confusing. And you start to think, am I truly paying a fair price for this thing? Now, when an asset of any kind is going up, right, it's really hard to down talk that at all, because you're kind of getting confirmation bias that what you're doing is working. And so clearly that's the way the trend should continue on, right? So if, let's say, Bitcoin's valued at $1 trillion and it just continues to go up, then folks are going to say, well, what are you going to say to us? Like, it continues to go up. It's on its way to becoming gold, right? $10 trillion. Now, on the flip side, I think it's always good to think about real world impact, right? And how much value is something really giving to the world? Now, this does not dictate the absolute value of something, but just like think about it for a moment, right? In a Millennial Money last night, we were talking about this, and I brought up this point, and I said, wipe Bitcoin off the face of the earth tomorrow. And the only people really negatively affected in any major way are folks that are investors of Bitcoin, right? That are invested in Bitcoin, and maybe folks that are working on Bitcoin related projects. But for the most part, 99% of the world doesn't blink an eye tomorrow if Bitcoin is wiped off the face of the earth. And if you've wiped off every single crypto out of existence tomorrow, 99% of the world, it doesn't make a difference to them at all, right? Versus if you wiped, let's say you wiped, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Google, these sorts of things off the face of the earth, right? Big, huge companies. Massive quantities of the world is affected in an immense way overnight, right? Let's say you just wiped off Amazon off the face of the earth. Amazon has a $1 trillion something market cap. Bitcoin has a $1 trillion something market cap. What's more valuable to the world? Amazon clearly by a mile, right? Mass amounts of people are affected by that overnight. If you wipe off Alibaba off the face of the earth tomorrow, right? Imagine how many people are negatively affected by that and are really actually like, oh my gosh, like Alibaba's not here, Tmall's not here, AliExpress isn't here, Ant Financial's not here tomorrow. Like that would be crazy to even imagine that, right? And Alibaba's valued at half of the value of Bitcoin, maybe less than half of the value. And so this one, it comes down to how should these things be priced, right? What is truly a fair price for them? Now, the thing a lot of folks don't understand is you don't know if you're going through a bubble when you're going through it, essentially. Not to say we're absolutely in a crypto bubble or something like that, because maybe we're not. And maybe Bitcoin's on its way to a $10 trillion market cap. And maybe all these coins are going to go up exponentially from here, right? Ethereum and the rest of them. But it's hard to say you're in a bubble if you're in the bubble and you're getting confirmation bias because things are going up, right? For instance, the tech bubble days, 98, 99. I mean, that was a very, very hard time to come out and tell a lot of folks that maybe something's a little awry here, guys. You had one group of folks saying, hey, man, this is a future. The internet's going to be this massive thing. You don't know what you're talking about, right? And you had this other group of folks saying, yeah, the internet can be a big thing in the future, but why are these things priced like this over here? This pricing seems a little insane here in the short term, right? And you had these two kind of sides fighting, right? And then the side that was obviously on the favor of tech stocks at that time, those folks didn't feel like we were in a bubble at all because they're like, you don't understand how big the internet's going to be someday. Meanwhile, these folks over here are like, man, some of these companies aren't even doing much and they're not even relevant today, and yet they have these massive valuations on it. And if you look at crypto right now, you're seeing the exact same thing play out in relation to the high majority of these crypto projects, if not all of them, have very little real world utility today in terms of people actually using them, like mass amounts of people. Like no one's like mass amounts of people using these, right? That's just factual. And when it comes to a lot of folks not using these today, it doesn't mean they'll forever not use these. It just means right now they're not using them, right? And if these are ever used in a major way, it could be a while. But then you got the huge valuation on it, and that's when it comes down to like, wait, should these things really be valued the way they are? Now, in the tech bubble, keep in mind when the bubble finally popped, right? When the bubble finally popped for the tech bubble, most of those companies went away. And maybe we see a similar scenario happen with crypto, right? Where, you have all this crazy amount of crypto projects, and then, let's imagine right now we're in some sort of bubble scenario. It pops in a major way, and every single crypto crashes in a major way. Then all of a sudden you're in a scenario where overnight, massive amounts of crypto projects are pretty much done zone overnight, right? And so you had that play out. Remember, Amazon, which was one of the very few companies that ended up making it out of the tech bubble and ended up becoming a super successful company. Amazon's stock price fell over 90% after the tech bubble. Over 90% peak to trough. Jeff Bezos said in an interview one time, I think it was something like 93%, okay? That is such a hard number to quantify. I mean, that's almost like you lost everything, right? It took Amazon many, many, many years to just get back to where Amazon was. And remember, Amazon was one of the few companies that made it through, okay? And it took Amazon so many years just to get back to where they were market cap-wise, stock price-wise, right? Think about that for a moment. And imagine if we are in a crypto bubble right now, right? Where these things are inflating and inflating. How far do these things fall if the bubble does pop, right? And once again, maybe we're not in a bubble and this is just normal times and Bitcoin's on its way to 2 trillion, 4 trillion, 6 trillion, 8 trillion, 10 trillion. That could be a scenario. But imagine for a moment we're not in that scenario, we're in a bubble. How far does it fall from here? And then is Bitcoin something that comes back? What about these other crypto projects? What about the 25th most important crypto project right now, right? It's hard to know exactly which ones will be successful. And, for instance, Ethereum is a project I've been, fairly excited about for at least a year or two. I watched several interviews that were done with the gentleman that leads the Ethereum project. And that's just one of those guys. It's like, you watch him and it's hard not to think like Ethereum is going to be something big, because if that guy just looks like he's going to dedicate his whole life to this, like as long as he's here on this planet, he's going to dedicate every minute to this thing. It doesn't look like the type of guy that's going to go flying around on private jets and hanging out in yachts and living the party life. He looks like he's just going to have his head down and making sure Ethereum is just this massive thing in the future, right? And so you've got some extremely bright people in the crypto space that some of these projects will grow into becoming unbelievably big projects. But how many of them? That's the big question. And at the end of the day, are these things valued correctly? Or are they extremely mispriced? And none of that we will know for a while. That's the interesting part. In my personal opinion, whenever I think about the value of something, right, I've got to, especially if we're talking big values, if we're talking $10 billion, $100 billion of value, $1 trillion, I've got to truly see that thing makes a huge difference in tons and tons of people's lives. I'm talking millions, tens of millions, or maybe even hundreds of millions of people's lives, right? If we start talking about those sorts of numbers. And just as of today, we just don't see that from crypto. Doesn't mean we can in 5 years from now, 10 years from now, but we just don't see it today. And with how highly priced a lot of these projects are, my kind of fear there is like, we might be getting way ahead of ourselves in countless of those. Now, me personally, I'm kind of playing in the picks and shovels businesses with some crypto brokerages and things like that as far as that goes. Because like I said, overall, I believe the crypto market will be an expansion market long term. It is hard not to believe at least a little bit in crypto. And that's why I choose to own crypto brokerages. That's why I choose to have crypto related things on the app. Because at the end of the day, I think crypto is going to become a bigger thing in the future. My main concern is around valuation of cryptos. And you can't get away with just saying it's going to be huge in the future. We could say that about so many things, okay? And what really becomes huge in the future? What's really going to become a game changer in the future? That's the big question. And you can't just slap $1 trillion valuation on this and a $500 billion valuation on this and a $200 billion valuation on this just because it could be something big in the future. You have to be seeing it in the real world, right? Tesla, the company behind me, right? Tesla, for a long, long period of time, was valued at 20 billion, 30 billion, 40 billion dollars. What Tesla had to prove was that they were going to be on a trajectory to become a mass vehicle maker plus more than that, right? And as soon as they really started to prove that over the last few years, look what happened to the stock price, right? It ran to, today Tesla's valued at something like $800 billion roughly, somewhere around there, right? Which, by the way, is less than Bitcoin. Which thing is more important, Bitcoin or Tesla? That's a good question, right? What's more important over time, Bitcoin or Tesla? That's just one of those questions you got to ask yourself sometimes, right? But when it comes to Tesla, they had to prove a lot before they got this huge valuation on themselves, right? Like, you got to prove a lot. And so when it comes to these crypto projects, we've really got to see them changing massive amounts of people's lives and doing it in a big way where the numbers become so big that you can't deny it, right? Where the trends become so big that you can't deny it. And it can't just be about, well, the price of it's going up, so therefore this means it's valued at, because people could just buy in, right? And if a bunch of rich people want to just continue to buy Bitcoin, that doesn't mean Bitcoin's necessarily should be valued at $100 trillion or something like that. That just means that's where people think the finesse is in the financial system and where they think they're going to get a good return on investment, right? That doesn't mean it's necessarily impacting people's lives the way you would expect something to. That would be valued at $5 trillion, $10 trillion, $100 trillion or whatever like that, right? Well, nothing's really valued at $100 trillion, to be honest, right? And so that leaves you for more food for thought there. And so I'm very intrigued to just see how all this plays out over the coming years. I think a lot of people don't want to have these sorts of conversations that we're having in this video here today, and I think this is a type of conversation that needs to be had where we really talk about this and the feelings and really talk about valuation. Because, like I said, you can't just say it's going to become huge in the future, therefore it should be valued as something. You've got to really have the data and the numbers behind you and saying it's doing this and this and this. And I think over time there will be a new way of valuing cryptos. I don't think we have that way nailed down yet because crypto is too new of a market to really have, the way we value stocks nowadays is very different than the way they were valuing stocks 100 years ago, right? 100 years ago, stocks were still around, but the way we value companies is just much, much different now. And so I think there's going to be a lot of changes to the way we value cryptos over the next 5, 10, 15 years. And then there will be more changes after that, and things will continue to adapt. But I think the major changes with valuations of cryptos will come over the next 5, 10 years. And then there will be a new consensus on here's how we value a crypto project. Here's why this thing deserves to trade at this price today, right? And I think over time it will be something that will be able to be taught. And I think a lot of people will understand it on a high enough level that they'll know kind of what's going on there, and it's not super pie in the sky type thing. When I think about stock market investing, as long as somebody has general business knowledge, right? They know what revenues are and profits are and net income and gross margin, things like that. As long as somebody had that very base level knowledge around business related things, I could teach. So if I sat down with somebody for 6, 7, 8 hours, I could teach them a ton about how to value a stock and why a value stock should be valued this way and why a company that has this growth rate should be valued this way, right? I could easily do that with somebody that just has base level business knowledge in a matter of 6, 7, 8 hours. I think at some point we're going to have that in the crypto space, but I think we're still a little bit of time away from that. I think that's going to be something that develops, and I think that will be one of the bigger developments actually in the crypto space. Some folks might not like that though, because they might feel then we're going too much off fundamentals. And a lot of folks, I've spoke to a lot of folks in this space, and a lot of them are like, hey, it's about the hype, man. It's about the hype. Don't talk to us about fundamentals, it's about the hype. Hype only lasts for so long. And when a lot of cheap money sloshing around, hype is good. That's just when there's a lot of cheap money sloshing around, man, the hype is like, that's everything, right? And anything hype builds and builds. But at the end of the day, the hype doesn't last, and cheap money doesn't always last, right? And then you go through a cycle where money pulls back, and the cheap money's not there. And that's another thing we're going to have to see from the crypto market. The crypto market has not been through a major recession yet. What we had happen in 2020 was not a major recession. That was like, the Fed backstopped everything. You couldn't kick people out of their houses. There was unemployment. They did everything possible to save that situation. What happens if we have a 2007 through 2009 type recession? What's going to happen in the crypto market? We don't know because we haven't been through it yet. It's never been through it. This is stuff that all started after the Great Recession, right? Coming out of the Great Recession. None of these crypto projects were known about in the last Great Recession. So what happens when we go through one of those situations? We don't know. None of us know. None of us can answer that because it hasn't happened yet, right? So that's just another kind of interesting thing that we'll have to see play out. So anyways, guys, hope you enjoyed this video. This is my crypto video that hopefully I'll be able to point everybody at if they really want my full thoughts on the crypto space, because I just shared it all there. There's nothing left for me to really share about cryptos other than what I just shared with you guys there. So hope you enjoyed this. All I ask in return is that you smash that like button. Much love as always, and have a great day.